So I wrote this article for people who wanted to start journaling, but they didn't know where to start, because I think a lot of times we tend to overthink things. And in that process, what starts out as something that's inspirational or something that might sound cool ends up being a big mess. And I wanted to help people not have to worry about the small details. So I wrote this article about journaling. I myself journal. It didn't start off consistent. It still isn't very consistent. But once I took the pressure off of myself, it took the chore out of it, and it became much more enjoyable, because then thoughts flowed more freely, without constraint, without expectation, without fear of judgment. And it was just me and the paper. Now, I like putting pen to paper. I enjoy that. So the article that I wrote was about that. And I think there's something special about putting pen to paper, because with today's technology, it seems as if taking the time to write, it's not important. And what used to be the only means of communication, it's now only reserved for those who still value its beauty. But there are still a lot of us who enjoy the nostalgia of this method of communication. I tend to feel fancy. I picture some elegant woman in a castle just penning something with a beautiful script on beautiful parchment. I like it. It's indulgent. But it's also calming. And I've discovered that when we take pen to paper, our thoughts slow down, our mind slows down, and our mind tends to wait patiently while we formulate or remember just the right words that we want to say. So it comes out exactly how we imagined it. And I think that's what the beauty of taking pen to paper does. And that alone is peaceful. It allows our thoughts to organize naturally, and it separates the chaos of everyday life from intent and purpose. I also believe that journaling is in itself a way to express what we have trouble speaking. It allows those thoughts that we dare not speak to be flushed out. It helps us find solutions to challenging situations. It allows us to look inside ourselves. When we look at our own words on paper and we see those are the thoughts that we are thinking, then we can find solutions. Or when we read our problems, we might think, oh, it isn't that bad after all. Or, oh, I know what to do. It helps find solutions to that. I think journaling also, it helps us check our own hearts, again, without fear of judgment or biased opinions, the ones that come from other people. Even the people that love us, they mean well, they love us, they don't intend us harm, but a lot of times even well-meaning people can give us some pretty terrible advice. It's therapeutic. There are studies out there, if you want to look them up, that talk about how journaling can ease anxiety, reduce mental stress. It's beneficial on a whole lot of levels. And also, if we use journaling to write down events while those memories are still fresh in our mind, it gives us insight as we look back on those pages into where we were or where we are in our lives. As we grow throughout the years, we can look back, we can think to ourselves as we look at ourselves and our way of thinking and our reactions and our emotions. We can think, wow, I really overreacted, or what did I see in that person, or I can't believe I fought so hard and felt so strongly about that job, or whatever the situation is that we're venting about. And looking back at old journals, it can also remind us of how far the Lord has brought us and just how much He's changed us. I think that's one of my favorites, because the Bible talks about a renewed mind, and as we grow in the Lord, things that used to bother us before don't bother us. Situations that would have had us panicked before, they're just not a big deal anymore. And going back and looking at old journals reminds us of just how far God has brought us, and those are beautiful times to rejoice. It's kind of like those old pics. I'm 58, so there's some old pictures of me when I was younger, and there's crazy hairdos, crazy outfits. It's kind of like that, only it's with our minds and hearts. I think what I love about journaling is that there really isn't a right or wrong way to do it. And if you're listening and you're a Christian and you want to start journaling, congratulations, because it's a beautiful journey. But you might be wondering how to start. It's very simple. Just start. Just start writing. Don't worry about a fancy book or what to put in it or whether or not you're doing it right, because there really isn't a right or wrong method to journaling. And nobody can tell you how to journal more than someone can tell you what to wear or how to do your makeup, and for my trucking sisters, how to run your truck. You do what works for you. It's a journey and it evolves, just like our taste in clothing, our taste in music, makeup styles, etc., our hairstyles, all of it. Journaling is the same way. So grab some paper. It could be computer paper. It could be one of the kids' old comp notebooks in a drawer somewhere, a cheap spiral notebook in the closet, a notepad. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be insta-perfect. And if you're into tech and you want to journal, you can use Google Docs or Word. Some people create a voice memo on their phone so they don't forget what they want to write about, and then they write it in their journal later. Another way is you can create custom journal pages online. I think they also have some that are already ready to print out, and just print them out as you need them, and then just stick them in a binder or a folder. But for the sake of what we're talking about now, I'm speaking specifically to the physical act of handwriting on paper, any paper. So let's talk about what to write. You write what's on your mind. Again, there isn't a right or wrong, and it could be something as simple as starting your day. How did your day go? How did you feel about it? What were the events that happened? What did you eat? Did you have a particularly good food? Did you forget to bring your lunch and you were hungry? Did somebody steal your food out of the fridge in the office? Talk about it. You'll discover that as you continue to write, your brain will get used to the process, and then it'll begin to flow. Thoughts will flow more easily. And when you're writing, you might notice that there are some pauses as words form in your head. If you've ever seen anybody pause and think about what they're going to say, it's kind of the same thing with writing. Eventually, or maybe even right at the beginning, words might flow like floodgates, like an open faucet, all the way open. And you just might be surprised at how easily words come. Maybe you want to start journaling because you want to write about your walk with God. And that action in itself is beautiful. In the Bible, the book of Habakkuk talks about writing the vision on tablets. And I can tell you from experience, doing this deepened my walk with God on so many different levels that I'm not going to get into here. But one of them is that I can keep track of scriptures. I can keep track of messages and blurbs from sermons, and writing these down allows me to go back and reflect when I have the time. But you do your journal however you want to do your journal. There's no right or wrong. Another question you might have is, how often should you write in your journal? It doesn't matter. You might want to write every day, want to write once a week, but you want to try to write when it's fresh in your head or scribbled on a piece of paper to write out later. The point is that when you want to write is when you write. And here's why. Let's say you decide, I'm going to start writing and I'm going to write every day. It might be a little overambitious if you have a busy schedule, and then you might beat yourself up or feel like you're failing at something because you're not able to do what you told yourself you were going to do. So once it becomes a formula or scheduled or too structured, that's when it can morph into a chore. And then that's when it starts losing its beauty. Honestly, I believe that's why some people quit journaling, because it should be enjoyable. It should be soothing, and it should be and can be, and a lot of times is, a means to reduce, if not eliminate, anxiety. Because a lot of times anxiety comes from keeping things bottled up, and when you're able to get it out into a journal, it's not bottled up anymore, and you're able to look at it on paper. So it feels like it's kind of out of your head, if that makes sense. So let's talk about the rabbit hole. Okay, once you get the hang of writing, I'm going to warn you, something is going to happen. You're going to start noticing differences in your handwriting, at least for me. And sometimes I write quickly because my brain's working overtime and I got to get the thought out and I don't want to forget it. Sometimes my writing is fancy and it's looped with exaggerated Y's and F's and G's. There are times when my writing is small. Say if I'm going through a hard time and I don't feel too great physically, or I'm just having a down day and I write, a lot of times my writing gets shorter. I notice that about myself. And you can also see how your writing evolves over the decades. And it's very interesting because once you get to learn and recognize the differences in your own handwriting, you're going to be able to flip through previous pages and say, oh, I was sad that day. Or what was going on there? That writing is tiny. So it's kind of interesting. It gives you insight into yourself. And another thing that happens when we start journaling is the act of journaling grows into the art of journaling. So you might start off with just some pencil or whatever you grabbed in the junk drawer, and now you have a favorite pen. You might discover that you like being curled up on an easy chair with a cup of coffee in the morning, or maybe in bed after everyone's asleep. It's because journaling becomes your time. It's a little slice of time in the day reserved just for you, like a skincare routine or getting a mani-pedi. Journaling, like I said earlier, it feels indulgent sometimes. And I think that's why so many people enjoy it, because it does feel, like I said, it feels fancy. It feels decadent sometimes. Okay, now I'm going to tell you about the pens. There are so many different types of pens and pencils. So if you've ever had a hobby, then you know the importance of your favorite tool. For instance, people who sew have their favorite scissors. Chefs have their favorite knives. And when you love writing by hand, you have your favorite pen. Recently, my daughter and I have discovered the joy of fountain pens. And there's something artistic and really decadent about learning how to put just the right amount of pressure on the pen to get the ink flowing perfectly, just the way you want it for your style of writing. And fountain pens come in all kinds of styles and price points. Some of them are engraved, some of them are gold-plated, some of them are stainless steel. And on top of all of that, it's really beautiful. It's wonderful to share a common interest with my daughter. We can completely nerd out and show each other pictures of gorgeous pens and stuff. We've talked about it. We haven't, as of right now, we haven't gotten into it, but we are discussing learning to write with quills and inkwells. Oh my gosh, I can't wait for that. So let's talk paper. From postcards to fine parchment, selecting the perfect paper to pen letters and thoughts. It's about as personal as the person who's writing. For letter writing, and I do love letter writing and sending it snail mail, I love a good parchment paper, and I like it with subtle lines and beautiful borders. But I'm not going to get off track with that because we're going to talk about the journals a little bit. Not the actual paper journals, but just journals in general. For me, I have a few different journals, each with a different purpose. And let me say this, my journaling journey, that sounds funny, it did not start out this way, and it was not planned. It's just how things have evolved. And it doesn't mean that that's how yours has to evolve, but this is just what happened to me. And as far as journals themselves go, I prefer mine lined, but otherwise blank. Some people like background pictures or pockets so they could stick things in there. It's whatever you want. Okay, my first journal is a prayer journal. It's not only prayer requests, but it's also praise. It's prayers for others. It's thanksgiving. It's anything that has to do with my communication with God. And what I love most about keeping a prayer journal is when God answers a prayer, and He does faithfully. I cross that request out in a different color ink, and then I put the date on the side. Then, when there's a tough situation and maybe my faith gets low, maybe I'm waiting on an answer and not getting it, and I'm wondering, am I missing something? What's going on? Does He even hear me? Okay, I always know that God hears me, but I think you get my point. All I need to do is look back in the journal at all the times that God was faithful, and it revives my faith. And man, it is comforting. It is so comforting. It is a beautiful tip that a mighty young lady of God gave to me when I was in Bible school. She told this to me. I was struggling with something. She prayed with me and she said, keep a prayer journal for just this reason. And truer words have never been said, and it has been so helpful. So I had to share it with you. So as more time goes by, the more answered prayers, and then the stronger my faith becomes, because then you start flipping through the pages and you start seeing all the places where it's crossed out and dated. Oh yeah, he did pay the rent. Oh yeah, I was believing for this piece of furniture and it came in. Oh yeah, I was praying for so-and-so's salvation and they got saved. Oh yeah, so-and-so got healed. And you get to see God's faithfulness, and it really cements in your faith. So when the devil comes like, oh, well, maybe he's the blah, 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 you can say, shut up, devil, because you don't know what you're talking about. Because I got it right here, how much God answers prayer. And it syncs with the Word of God about how He hears us and how He wants to heal us and how we talk to Him and our relationship with God and Jesus and the Holy Spirit. It's I can't speak enough about a prayer journal. If you don't have any other journals, get a prayer journal or papers or whatever. So you can start there. Okay, sermon notes. Another one of my journals is dedicated to sermon notes. Now, I have a home church, and I also listen to a few different pastors. So I put the date on top and who I'm listening to. So sometimes I put the title just for future reference. Now, this journal comes with me to church, and I stick the bulletin in it. If I miss any points, say maybe the pastor's speaking too quickly for me to write all the information down, I can refer to the points on the bulletin and write down my thoughts and do a study afterwards when I get home. I also use the journal for note-taking when watching sermons online. So the good part about watching some sermons online is you can pause it and rewind it and get your notes down thoroughly and put your thoughts down at the same time that you're writing the notes down. A lot of times with live sermons, especially if you have a pastor that preaches heavy on the Bible, and I mean heavy, like it's a workout. Your pen's getting a workout because they're telling you 10, 15, 20 scriptures all within a short period of time. So I only have time to write down the scriptures. So that's my sermon note journal. As a writer, I also have a writing journal, and this one is just for writing ideas only. Articles, blogs, books, and there are always possible topics to write about. They are always flowing through my mind like a river, and I don't want to lose any of them. Some of them are terrible ideas, some of them are pretty cool, some of them I'm praying about. But when I get an idea, I just jot it down and I leave it there. I don't touch it. When I need inspiration, I start flipping through the journal. Oh yeah, and I'll look at something. Oh yeah, I forgot about that one. And then I'll pray about it. And if it's something that I want to actually write at that moment, I'll open a Google Docs and I get busy doing whatever needs to be done to get that article or post ready for publication. I do my research, I do my outlines, all of that stuff. Then I put a check mark next to the idea in the journal. So I know that that idea comes to fruition. Sometimes I put the date as to when it was published. Sometimes I put where it was published because there are different platforms. In the docs file, I also put in whether it's in progress or published, and I put that in the title. So I know not to go back to that article and say, oh yeah, and I forget that I write it. Not that I've ever done that before, but I just don't want to take any chances. So I have a prayer journal, sermon notes, and writing ideas. I also have a journal for my businesses. I do not keep important papers here. I don't keep super important ideas or like passcodes or account numbers or anything like that. I use this for thoughts, brainstorming, to-do lists, and it helps keep my business. There's no feelings, there's no thoughts on how the day went. It's just to-do lists and brainstorming. So why do I have so many journals now? Okay, honestly, I found myself wasting a lot of time looking for specific notes. I was rummaging through piles of journal pages in a folder because I never thought that I would need a bound journal. So I just was writing on computer paper, notebook paper, and I used to drive trucks. So they would fall out and I would just like shove them all back in there. And it was really annoying because if I wanted to look for a specific scripture or a business idea or something like that, I couldn't find anything. And it was chaotic. It was unorganized, untitled. If it was online, it was mistakenly deleted because I didn't properly title it. Things that I didn't want to throw away got thrown away. That was when it was pretty clear that it was time to invest in journals. So maybe you're more organized than I am and you won't see the need for more than one. Maybe you'll use a color coding system or something to keep it easy. If you do, I give you props. I wish I could be that organized. So with all of these mentioned, you might wonder if I keep a personal journal. Well, I used to. I haven't in about 3 years now. Most of my journaling before that was pretty unorganized, and a lot of the thoughts were just random venting anyway, because that's just how my brain was. That was all before ministry. That was before Bible school. I needed to get my thoughts out. But once I started keeping a prayer journal, my thoughts changed from reactions and feelings to situations to thoughts with purpose, intent, and prayer. My mind became calmer and everything else just became more peaceful than when I kept a personal journal when I was still in the world. So I have some that I just kind of stopped, but the dates on them are, years ago. You might be asking, where do I get them? Because they can be a little pricey. That's no lie. Journals can be pricey. I pick them up at garage sales, thrift stores, the clearance bins in bookstores, or basically any store with a book section. A lot of times I give the new ones out with Bibles. And sometimes I'll pick some up that will be used, but maybe only a few pages are used. So I just rip them out. And then if they're written on the inside cover, I just get some really pretty paper from like Hobby Lobby and I just glue it on there to cover it up, make it really pretty. Basically, you can find them anywhere online, big box stores, anywhere. And if you're feeling a little crafty, you can even make them yourself. There are a ton of tutorials online and you can make them with leather bindings, cardboard bindings, old notebooks. You can learn to stitch them yourself. There's just a whole slew of ways to make your own journals. So no matter how you go about it, journaling your thoughts and prayers or ideas can help reduce stress, keep you organized, and soothe the senses. So tell me, I would love to hear what you did or are doing to start your journey in journaling. And also, I'd like to add a quick but important note to anyone who's listening who has never accepted Jesus as their personal Lord and Savior, but would like to. And you may not even know what that means. And I'm not saying that just to start journaling, but to start your walk with the Lord and learn what it's all about. So click the link below to learn more, because if He can save me, there's hope for everybody. Until next time, thank you for joining me. God bless.